It's very nice to see you again. I had a pleasant experience when I came here to spend time for Vesak this year. And I was able to take a lot of pictures home to show the people in our area the activities that the Buddhists are doing in Malaysia. Now we are just about approaching the end of the year, but as I noticed there are a tremendous amount of young people here at the temple. So I think that a lot of reflection is needed at the end of the year to reflect how well we have done in trying to practice the teachings of the Buddha, how well we have done in being patient, in being kind, in being generous, and how well we have done in learning not only the Dhamma, but also many secular academic subjects so that we can improve our lifestyles. But yet, at the beginning of this year, we are faced with many issues for the new year of 1991. And one of those issues is the environment. The second issue is our social conditions. The third issue is health conditions. The fourth issue is economics. How well can we survive in the future? What does the future hold for us? But yet in Buddhism, we are taught to take one day at a time. But yet, a lot of the young people are saying, what do the future hold for me? I myself am wondering what's going to happen between the 1st of January to the 15th. Because we may be at war in my country, and which we see that these issues could have been discussed. Is where our leaders should set the example so that we can learn how to discuss problems, how we can overcome different conflicts. But yet, both sides are quite stubborn. So they talk, well, if you move out, then we can discuss. But yet at the same time, we do other unscrupulous type things which may cause one to resent the actions of the other. Another issue is the environment, pollution, bad water, unclean air, losing the trees, the ozone environment is being destroyed. There's so many different things that is going on that a lot of the young people are really wondering, what are we going to inherit? Will we inherit a land of beauty, of prosperity, clean air, a place where we can raise our children, a place where we could be happy to a certain extent? Because we do live in samsara, and we live in times when we are happy one moment, we are a little sad the next moment. We may be in love for one day. We may lose that love the next day. So many things are going on. The world is rapidly changing. It's becoming smaller and smaller. Boundaries are being broken down. We're coming closer together. A lot of us are not familiar with each other's culture. A lot of us are not familiar with each other's languages and customs and ways. So we sometimes go through what is called cultural shock. So much is going on so fast, and so many changes are coming so rapidly that a lot of times we fall into states of confusion and even states of misunderstanding. So, coming with the first of the year for all of us in the whole world, we have to look at these issues, and we have to find ways as individuals to correct each and every issue in our own way. And at the same time, we have to do it collectively. A lot of the young people can no longer be silent, because as each of us grow older and older every day, our lives will soon come to an end. And all of this, that means the young people will have to prepare themselves to take care of it. They have to correct a lot of problems. So when we reflect on these things, we look as individuals, what can I do to correct something? No matter how small of an action that we can take, it is better than just quietly standing to the side and let someone else do the work. We each has a job to do as an individual, but yet we each have a job to do as a community. And it doesn't matter what part of the world we come from. The world is the place where we were born. The world is the place where we will die. So far, they're able to go to the moon, yes. But with my suspicions, they're hoping that they may be able to probably move people to other planets. That this is the plan of NASA. This is the plan of the future. This is what is called the space age. But what do we want to take with us into the universe? Do you want to take McDonald's hamburgers? Do you want to take plastic bags, styrofoam cups? What do we want to take with us into the universe? The best thing we could take is peace, happiness, loving kindness, contentment, the desire to learn, the desire to explore the unknown. This is all the things that the Buddha have taught us right here on earth, to desire to find out the unknown, the nama rupa. Who are we? What are we? Where did we come from? Where are we going? Why do we suffer? Why some people are rich and others are poor? Why? Is it our karma? Can we, as Buddhists say, because this person is poor, perhaps they may have had bad karma? Not necessarily so. Sometime in a country, they can have what is called collective karma. This is a karma that could be created collectively. And sometime if we don't look within ourselves, we could find the answer how to overcome that condition. But sometimes, some people are handicapped. So we, as the good friend, have to help lift that person up, to help that person move along with us. We can't say, I want to be rich, I want to have a nice car, beautiful home, and all these things. This is nice for each of us to have and each of us to desire. With the new technology that we have now, there's a big trade-off, like we say in America. The country here is growing, it's been prosperous. A lot of people are working and doing very well. Students are being well educated. People will be getting to travel from different parts, leaving Malaysia, going to other countries, and vice versa. But yet, as we move along this road of knowledge, learning, and understanding, we still have to look within ourselves. We still have to depend on ourselves. What is truly right and what is truly wrong. One of the most beautiful things about Buddhism is that we can't cover up our actions. We can't run away from ourselves. And a lot of us try. And we try and we try to run and to run and to run. And every which way, every direction we take, we run right back into ourselves again. Each time we run. But then as we grow in discipline and practice and learning of meditation, we begin to slowly understand our nature, to understand our lacks, our dislikes, to understand how we should be treated, and also to understand how we should treat others. And this gives us a sense of freedom, and also it gives us a sense of confidence. And one of the practices that I use, especially coming towards the end of the year, is to look back and reflect on all the good things perhaps I may have done, but also all the wrongdoings I may have done. And then we weigh these. And then when the new year approaches, we make a vow to be better. Another good way to do it is to sit down and write all the good things that have happened to me this year. Then also all the bad things that have happened to me this year. And then we look at our list and we compare. And then we'll see the truly wonders of the teachings of the Dhamma, the truly wonders of it. We will see how we was able to overcome some things that we thought we could never do. We will see the power, the true power of mind. And the true understanding of mind will give us that total sense of freedom, which is very beautiful, very calming, very warming. And at the same time, we see the connection that we have between each and every one of us, whether we are in Malaysia, America, or anywhere else in the world. Last year in San Francisco, we had a very terrible earthquake. And this brought the realization to a lot of people that when the earth, our mother, the earth, when it moves and it shakes, and perhaps sometime the ground will even open, and our homes are destroyed in an instant, we realize the true impermanence, that we may be powerful with technology, we may be powerful with education, but when that earth moves from up under your feet, it's put a fear will go to the very marrow of your very being, because you know when that earth moves out from under you, there's nothing that we can stand on to support us. So we ride with the rolling and the flowing and the movement of the land. But yet afterwards, there's a great fear. I'm not sure how many of you have experienced earthquakes or things like that here in Malaysia. But for me, I have experienced a number of earthquakes. I live in the land of earthquakes. We have earthquakes almost every day, small ones. But the one of last year, October 17th, 1989 at 4:01, is a day that I and many people in my country will never forget. Instantly, 65 lives were lost. Beautiful buildings that we thought was earthquake safe collapsed. There was an instance where a woman lived in a 5-story apartment building. For about 17 seconds it took for that 5th floor to reach the 1st floor. And she stepped out of the window right onto the sidewalk to escape. So this impermanence is shown to us a lot in nature. It is shown to us in many ways. We learn not only from our mistakes, but we also learn from the mistakes of others. We should never be too proud or to be too sure of ourselves, because just when we have that full surety that we are doing really well, that we are doing really great, this is when the teachings of Buddhism again come in, and it will challenge you. You're doing fine, huh? Let's see if you can handle this one. And then all of a sudden, a new problem will pop up. And we'll run around. Sometimes we'll pull our hair out. We'll beat our chests. But if we calmly sit down, some way, somehow, we'll be able to overcome that condition. It gives us the strength of being firm and being very, very patient. This road of the Dhamma, some people will take and they'll say, maybe I'll stop now and rest a little bit, I don't really think it works for me. It's not an instant thing, it's a daily thing, it's a moment-to-moment thing. It is very gradual, very sure, but very slow. We have to learn a lot of patience. A lot of times at home, a number of people come to us and they want what I like to call instant enlightenment. It's almost like you could put a tablet in a glass of water and you take this and you drink it and instantly you are enlightened. But it doesn't work that way. It tests our patience to a great extent. And so with the new year coming in, we can look at all these different things that we have to reflect on, especially the young people. You have a lot of challenges before you, a lot of work that has to be done, not only for our community, for our country, for our world, but also especially for ourselves as an individual. Decide what is truly right, what is truly the noble way, what is truly the way that we can find some contentment and some happiness. But don't attach to that happiness and contentment, because then again the Dharma would come into play and will test us. Oh, so you're very happy right now? So let's see if you can handle this one. And then another problem we have to face is a total growing and learning and growing and learning that we have to keep experiencing as we walk the path of the Dhamma, as we learn more and more. We try to break off our unwholesome actions and create wholesome actions. So, to bring my talk to a close, I wish you all the peace, the happiness, the prosperity, the joy, and the understanding to experience the Dhamma, to propagate the Dhamma, to keep the Dhamma as your own, but yet shared with each and every being. May you be well, may you be happy.
Most Venerable Dr. K. Sri Dhammananda Nayaka Thera, Chief High Priest of Malaysia, dear sisters and brothers, today I would like to speak on how to gain happiness here and hereafter. Today, I think, happened to be my last talk for this year because I shall be leaving on 1st January 1991. Though I leave Malaysia after 1 year, 1991, today happened to be my last talk. So in the New Year day, many of your friends, relatives may wish you Happy New Year. So I thought it is better for me to speak how to gain happiness here and hereafter according to Buddhism. So before I come to the subject, I would like to say a few words about my experience in Bricksfields Buddhist Vihara. I have heard about this Buddhist temple and the chief high priest here and his service to the Sasana and various type of Buddhist programs which are very helpful for the Buddhist community in Malaysia. So it was my long cherished wish to see this country and visit this temple and to observe the Buddhist activities with my own eyes. So I had this opportunity due to the kindness of Most Venerable Dr. K. Sri Dhammananda Nayaka Thera to experience how the successful Buddhist activities are going on and how far they are helpful for the Buddhist community, not only for the Buddhist community in Malaysia but also for the Buddhists all over the world. So in appreciating his service, if I do not speak few words, I feel it a bit heavy for me. Therefore, I would like to appreciate his service before I go to my country. There is a saying of the Buddha in Anguttara Nikaya. It is in the fourth book. It is recorded in the Anguttara Nikaya, fourth book. Bhikkhu bhikkhave viyatto vinito visardo bahusuto dhammadaro dhammanudhamma patipanno sanghang sobheti. The bhikkhu who illuminate the order, Buddha explained. If a bhikkhu who accomplished in wisdom, viyatto, vinito, discipline, visarado, confident, bahusuto, well learned, well read, dhammadaro, dhamma bearer, dhammanudhamma patipanno, behave according to the dhamma. Such monk illuminate the sangha. So I was thinking about this line when I think of Venerable Dr. Sri Dhammananda's service. I would like to tell you, it is very rare in this world find a Buddhist monk in his caliber, in his capacity. I think his services to this country is like a light to Malaysian Buddhist. So I think during last few decades, due to his earnest effort, there is much improvement, much understanding, deep understanding of Buddhism we can see in the Buddhist community in Malaysia. Actually, Buddha said, once one monk was looking at the Buddha's figure. He was enjoying looking at the Buddha's physical figure. His name was Vakkali. Buddha advised this monk, Kimme Vakkali Mina Putikayen. What is the use of looking at this body? Yo Dhammam Passati Somam Passati. If one sees the Dhamma, if one realizes the Dhamma, if one understands the Dhamma, he sees me. So to see the Buddha, one has to understand Buddhism, one has to learn Buddhism, one has to study Buddhism. So learned monk, scholarly monk, well-read monk can distribute Dhamma. He can disseminate the message of the Buddha not only to his own community but throughout the world. So Venerable Dr. Dhammananda has done it very well. He has written many books. There are many scholars who have written on Buddhism, but many books the ordinary lay people cannot understand. But he has written books I think each and everyone can understand. In a very simple way, very light way, he has written. So his service we can appreciate, and what I have to tell you is this: you are very lucky. It is an advantage of you to have a noble guide like Venerable Dr. Sri Dhammananda. So his name, I think, will be in my memory forever. I could learn so many things from him. Still I like to learn many things whenever I have time for it. But unfortunately, we don't have much time because we are not given leave. So long leave, only 1 month, 2 month leave in a year we can get. But if I can get leave, I like to work with him. I like to assist him so that I can also join his service to Buddha Sasana, and also at the same time I can learn much from him. And also I would like to tell you, some people think that the monk must be in the temple, in the forest hermitage. He must be all the time in meditation. He must be a meditation guide. But it is also very useful. Meditation is very useful. Meditation is very profitable. We must learn meditation. But if we think of the history of the Sasana, if all the monks were meditating without learning Dhamma and without teaching Dhamma, the Buddha Sasana would have lost long back. And another example, you have heard how Buddhism was established in Sri Lanka. Venerable Arahant Mahinda went to Sri Lanka. He introduced Buddhism to Sri Lankans. King and the people, ordinary people, became Buddhist. Bo tree was planted and many religious buildings were built, and Bhikkhu Sasana, Bhikkhuni Sasana, both were established. Later, the king asked a question from Venerable Mahinda. Venerable Sir, I would like to know whether the Sasana has taken root in this soil. Sasana has taken deep root in this soil. Then Venerable Mahinda said, no. He said no. Then the king asked, what should be done to take deep root in this soil? Then, O king, you must make arrangement to ordain young people, young children from this soil, and make arrangement to learn them Vinaya, discipline, and Dhamma, doctrine. After learning Dhamma and Vinaya, doctrine and discipline, when they start to teach their student doctrine and Dhamma, then I can say the Buddha Sasana has taken deep root in the soil of Sri Lanka. So we must understand, we have to teach Dhamma, and there must be student, keen student who can study this deep Dhamma, and only those monks can spread Dhamma. Otherwise, only teaching meditation won't do. It will be helpful, no doubt. But we must appreciate the monks who teach Dhamma, spread Dhamma, that we should not forget. And at the time of the Buddha, there were many Arahants. You can remember, Venerable Sariputta was the foremost among the Arahants who had understood Dhamma very well. Dhamma Senapati, his epithet was Dhamma Senapati. And Venerable Ananda, Dhamma Bhandagarika, who could remember all the suttas Buddha preached. Venerable Moggallana. Some Arahants took permission from the Buddha to stay in the forest hermitage, like Venerable Kassapa. When he asked the permission from the Buddha to stay in forest, Buddha gave permission to him. But when Venerable Upali asked the permission from the Buddha to go to the forest. Buddha said, no. You must stay in the monastery. You must train the young bhikkhus. You must teach discipline to the young bhikkhus. So from these examples we can understand teaching Dhamma, spreading Dhamma, training in discipline and doctrine is very important. If you think of the Buddhist history, there were many hundred thousands of arahants who meditated, who attained arahanthood. We don't know even their names. But we speak of Venerable Buddhaghosa, Venerable Dhammapala, Venerable Sumangala, Venerable Mahinda, Venerable Moggali Puttapissa, Venerable Revata, Venerable Mahakassapa, Venerable Ananda. Why? Due to their earnest effort, we have Dhamma today. We have Dhamma today. Therefore, we must appreciate the both sides. We must be fair and just. We must understand deeply the value of these both sections. Even during the life of the Buddha, there were some monks who were ordained at the old age, like Chakkupala. When you have time, you please read the first story of Dhammapadatta Dhammapada. I think our Venerable Sri Dhammananda Thera has edited and published one Dhammapada, very nice edition. You can read the first story. Venerable Chakkupala, when he was ordained, he approached the Buddha and asked, Bhante, how many vocations are there in the sasana, in this dispensation? Then the Buddha said, there are two. Gantha Durancha, Vidarsana Durancha. Vidarsana Dura means to learn meditation and practice meditation. To look after his own salvation. That is Vidarsana Dura. Grantha Dura means to understand, to learn the Dhamma, one Pitaka, whole canon, or one book, or one sutta. After learning it, train the others in that doctrine and teach others. So there are these two vocations in Buddhism. So those monks who could learn Dhamma very well, because everyone cannot learn Dhamma, everyone cannot study, especially those who are ordained at the old age, after 50, 60, they can't study. Very seldom a monk like to study. But those who are ordained in the young age, they can study. Therefore, those who were ordained at the young age, they are trained, especially in Buddhist countries like Sri Lanka, Thailand, Burma, to study Dhamma with grammars. Sometimes we were asked to learn by heart some books, 2-3 books, learn by heart at our young age. Therefore, these two sections are necessary for the perpetuation, stabilization of the Buddha Sasana. And also you please remember there is one verse in Visuddhimagga, Sila Nirdesa, the first chapter. Bahusutopi chehoti silesu susamahito ubayenanam pasansanti silatocha sutonecha. If a monk become disciplined, become virtuous, and at the same time, if he is become a learned monk, he will be praised by his virtues as well as his scholarship. So the monk, virtuous as well as learned, are praised. Even the Buddha praised such monks. So these both aspects are necessary. Therefore, please don't misunderstand. Only those who devote their whole life for meditation and every time meditating, going, coming, walking, eating, every time devoting meditation, they are higher than all the monks. We should not think like that. It is not fair. We need both the sections. Without learning the Dhamma, we cannot dispel our doubt, we cannot have right thought, we cannot have right view. Therefore, we must understand the validity of the learning. And after all, after meditating, now we have to attain Nibbana, we have to follow Sila Samadhi Panya. So, Panya, when you want to practice Panya, there are Suttamaya Panya, that is scholarship, that is learning, Suttamaya Panya, the wisdom you gain from learning. It is necessary. So what I wanted to tell you these things, because some people think that those who are engaged in scholarly work, those who are engaged in spreading Dhamma, those who are engaged in training others, they are not so higher. Only those monks who live in the forest, devoting whole time for meditation, devoting whole time only for their salvation, they are higher than all the other monks. We should not think in that line. We need the monks of both the sections. We need the meditation masters, we need the learned monks. We have to gain the profit from both sections. So, I don't want to explain more about this. Now I like to go to the topic, how to gain happiness here and hereafter. Because many people in the world, those who don't understand Buddhism thoroughly, those who have superficial understanding of Buddhism, they think that Buddhism cannot be followed in cities, towns. Those who follow Buddhism, they must go to the forest and sit under a tree, and they must be alone, and they must meditate, they must close eyes, and they must be cut off completely from the society. They have some such ideas. Some people have got such ideas. But Buddhism is not only for the life after. Buddhism is for this life and also life after. That we must understand first. What Buddha has taught during his 45 years is very much helpful for this life and also life after. So if any one of you think that Buddha's doctrine is only for life after, next birth, you have misunderstood Buddhism. And I don't think that any other teacher, religious teacher in the world, other than the Buddha, who has preached so much about the happiness of this life. Because in many suttas, Buddha explained how to gain happiness. But I have no time to quote all these suttas. From few suttas, I will present you some points. Once Buddha was living in Kolia city. Some Kolia princess came to him and they worshipped the Buddha and sat on one side and invited the Buddha in this way. Mayang bhante gihi kama bhogi. O Lord, we are the people who enjoy sensual pleasures. Gihi kama bhogi. Puttadar sambhada sayanang ajhavasama. We are family men. We are maintaining family, wife and children. Kasika chandanang tachanubhoma. We use the sandal of Kasi city. Kasi was very famous for sandal. Kasi is one of the famous cities in India. Even nowadays it is the city called Kasi. කාසික චන්දනං පච්චන භෝම මාලා ගන්ධ විලේපනං ධාරයාම. We use very costly cosmetics, fragrance, and we are leading a luxurious life. Therefore, you please tell us a doctrine which suit to us. We are not an ordinary people. We are leading a luxurious life. We are princes. We are very rich people. We are enjoying the material wealth. So, all the comforts, all the luxuries we enjoy, we are such people. Therefore, you must please preach a doctrine to suit us. So, from this invitation, you might be able to understand what type of doctrine Buddha will preach to them. So Buddha said, Chattaro me vyagapajya dhamma kulaputassa ditta dhamma hitaya sangvattanti ditta dhamma sukhaya. Oh, Vyagapajya, their family name is Vyagapajya. Oh, Vyagapajas, there are 4 things which will be conducive to the well-being of this life. What are they? Utthana sampada, the effort, energy. Enthusiasm. Araksha sampada, the protection of the wealth. Kalyana mittata, associate with noble friends. Samajivakata, lead a balanced life. These are the 4 things. We take one by one. The first one is Utthana Sampada. Buddha said, people may have different jobs, maybe people may be engaging in various professions. In whatever profession, whatever job, whatever vocation one engage, he must work earnestly, skillfully, enthusiastically, energetically. Then only he can be successful. Utthana Sampada, energy, is very important. Without energy, without enthusiasm, without effort, we cannot gain anything in this world. For a businessman, for teachers, for doctors, for students, for monks, everyone, they must be energetic, they must be skillful. Otherwise, they will lose. They can't be successful. Buddha, if you think of the Buddha's life, how many years he made effort for achieving his goal. 6 years he was striving. 6 years. So by experience, Buddha said, all the bodhisattvas have to strive. Virya is one of the energy. Virya, one of the 10 perfections. Virya paramita. And Buddha said, Uttaka vindate dhanam. Those who want to earn money, they have to be energetic, skillful. They have to make effort. And one Sanskrit Pandit said, you can remember, can keep in your mind, Udyoginang Purusha Singham Upaiti Lakshmir, Daivena Deya Mitika Purusha Vadanti. Everything will come to us due to our destiny. Only the foolish people think in that line. So we have to make effort. Yatne krite yadi nasiddhyati kotra dosa. After making much effort, if it is not successful, there is nothing wrong. Nothing wrong, that Pandit says. Nahi suttasya singhasya pravishanti mukhe mruga. The lion is the king of the animals. Even the lions remain in sleeping throughout the day. He must analyze he must be mindful. He must think of the result. What type of result I can gain if I perform the act in this way? In this way, he has to make effort. That is Utthana Sampada. That is the first one, to gain happiness in this life. Second one, Arakka Sampada. Arakka Sampada means what type of wealth, property you have earned through righteous means, that you have to protect. If you spend unnecessarily, unwisely, then you will be in trouble. You won't gain happiness. You must know how to use, how to protect your wealth. You won't gain happiness. You must know how to use, how to protect your wealth. Sometimes in some families, the gentleman, he earns, but the wife spends lavishly without thinking of the earning, without thinking of the future. Then you cannot gain happiness. Sometimes wife protect everything, but the husband, he spend money lavishly on unnecessary things, sometimes for drinking, sometimes for gambling. In that way, if both the persons, husband and wife, do not think of protection of the wealth, they cannot gain happiness. So the protection, Arakka Sampada, is very useful. Buddha gave advice to the monks how to use the ropes. You will be surprised to hear. Once, Venerable Ananda gave a sermon in King Udayanas palace. 500 ladies offered 500 robes to Venerable Ananda. The king became a bit upset about this, because one monk got 500 robes. What will he do, taking all these robes? King Udayana went to Venerable Ananda and asked him, what you are going to do having all these robes? Then Venerable Ananda said, "O king, we have one monk who protect all these robes. If monks come, those who have no robes, those who need robe, we give these robes to them." Oh, okay. Then, supposing that you use this robe, how do you use it? In what way? And Venerable Ananda say, oh, when it get torn, we are advised to make patches, make stitching 5 times in the robe. We can stitch 5 times and use the rope. Okay, then after 5 times stitching, you cannot use the rope, then what will you do? Then I use it for the beds, like bed sheets, I use them. If you can't use them as bed sheets, then what will you do? Then I make some carpet out of these ropes. Even though you cannot make carpets out of them, what will you do? Then I make string out of these ropes. Even though if you cannot use strings, then what will you do? Then I make use of them when we make houses, make rooms. We put them in the wall. We mix these stone ropes with the mud and we make walls of the huts, small huts, kuti. So then King Udayana became very happy. He became very glad and he offered another 500 ropes. So we were advised to use ropes like that. Because the people offer these to gain merits, so we have to use them very carefully. So Buddha advised the monks. And also to use the balls also like that. We have to use them very carefully. In monasteries, there are monks. Monks have to be appointed to look after these things. Sanghika property. The property belongs to the Sangha. So Buddha gave advice to the monks to protect the Sanghika property. The property belongs to the Sangha. So what I was telling to you, what type of wealth we have earned, we have to protect. We should use when the time and need arise. Otherwise, we should not use them. We should not misuse them. The third one is Kalyana Mittata, to associate with noble friends. It is very important. Buddha once said, the whole sasana will depend on the Kalyana Mitta, noble friends. Once Venerable Ananda said, "Oh Bhante, I think that the Buddha Sasana is, the half of the Buddha Sasana is depend on the noble friends." Buddha said, no, Ananda, you are wrong. The whole Sasana is depend on the Kalyana Mitta. Kalyana Mitta is the noble friend, good friend, who advises his friends to act properly, act correctly, to avoid evil and not to do sin. Every time he guides properly. That type of friend we call Kalyana Mitta, this noble friend. Buddha himself said, Mamanghi Ananda Kalyana Mittang Upasankamitva Satta Jati Dhamma Jara Dhamma Marana Dhamma Paraminchisanti. Oh Ananda, many people approach to Kalyana Mitta like me and they attain salvation from birth, from decaying and from death. They attain Nibbana. So Kalyana Mitta is very important in Buddhism, and those who practice meditation, they must need a Kalyana Mitta. But Kalyana Mitta must have special qualities. Piyo, Garbhavaniyo, Vattacha Vachanakkamo, Gambhirancha Katang Vatta. He must be a pleasant person. He must speak pleasant word, Piyo. Garbhavaniyo, he must be a respectful person. Vatta, Gambhirancha Katang Vatta, he must be a learned man who speak on deep doctrine. No chattane niyoje, he must lead his followers properly. So these qualities must have the guide, meditation master, Kalyana Mitta. Kalyana Mitta, due to Kalyana Mitta, many people realize Dhamma. The opposite is the Papa Mitta, evil friend. Those who follow evil friends, they lost their chance to attain Nibbana. For example, King Ajatasattu, he had perfected paramitas, perfections. He could attain Sotapatti, but due to the evil friend, he was misguided by Devadatta. Therefore, he killed his father. He became a patricide. Therefore, just after his life, he was born in the hell. So he lost that chance. Therefore, associating the Papa with the evil friend is harmful, and associating the noble friends is profitable, meaningful. They can realize the Dhamma. So Kalyana Mittata, associating with noble friends, is conducive to gain happiness in this life, because the noble friends, they will guide you in the proper way. They will show you the proper path. So following the guidelines of a noble friend you can gain success in your life. The fourth one, Samajivikata. One must have a balanced life. That means we must spend money in proportion to your earning. Sometimes some people spend money without thinking of their earning. They spend much. Then what happens? They cannot balance their life. Life becomes imbalanced. So, Samajivikata means to have a balanced life. You must spend money according to the proportion what you earn. So Buddha has given one good example. The person who spends much money without thinking of his earning is compared to a person who eats udumbara. Udumbara is kind of fruit. I don't know whether that particular fruit is in Malaysia. I don't know the English term also. Udumbara. It's a kind of tree. It has a lot of fruits. Those who want to eat this fruit, some people they shake the tree, the whole tree, then all the fruits will fall down. The young fruits, the ripened and unripened, everything will fall. So he eats only few fruits, but he made to fall down all the fruits in the tree. So if some person without thinking of his earning, if he spend much, then what happens? It's like udumbara khadika, the person who eats udumbara fruit. He lose much. So our life should be balanced. We must think of our expenses. We should not be extravagant. We should think of our expenses. We must think of our future. We must think of our children. We must think of our health. So, thinking all of this, we must save some money for our future. We must save some money for our children. We must keep some money to get our children educated. In this way, they part the money, they divide the money and they balance the earning in proportion to their earning. This is Samajivikata. If one spends much more money than he earns, then what happens? He will run to debt. Every month, at the end of the month, he has to borrow money, and the people will be running after him every month. So we have to balance our earning, our expenditure. That is Samajivikata. So these are the four things which are conducive you to gain happiness in this life. And also once Buddha was asked by famous banker Anathapindika, in what way we can gain happiness. Buddha explained, the lay people have four types of happiness in this life. Attisukha, if you have enough wealth, sufficient wealth, it is a happiness. But you must earn that wealth through righteous means. That is important, because unrighteous means, if you earn something, it is un-Buddhistic. So, Attisukha. Then the Bhoga Sukha. If someone can spend his money on his own welfare and on his family's welfare, on his relatives' welfare, it is Bhoga Sukha. It is the second type of happiness in this life. Third one is Anana Sukha. Anana. If you can lead your life without borrowing money from anybody, if you can balance your life, that is also a sukha, happiness, Anana Sukha. The last one is Anavajja Sukha, that is the most important one. If you don't commit any sin, if you don't commit any unwholesome act, then you have this Anavajja Sukha. You are free from sin. That is also a happiness. These are the 4 types of happiness you can gain in this life. So the life after happiness, Buddha explained in this sutta, Vyakapajja Sutta. There are 4 things which will be conducive to gain happiness life after. The 4 things. Saddha Sampada. Saddha, confidence, having confidence in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, triple gem. It is very much helpful for you to learn Dhamma. Saddha Jato Upasankamati. If you have Saddha, faith, confidence in the triple gem, you come to the temple, you associate with the monks, you listen to the monks, you listen to the Dhamma, then you keep the Dhamma in your mind, then you think of the mind, when you have the Dhamma in your mind, when you are free, you think of the Dhamma. Then you can yourself think that, oh, this is the Dhamma I should follow. These things I should avoid. So in that way, if one has Saddha, faith, he can easily come to the path, correct path. Sila Sampada. Sila, you know, moral conduct. Sila, in few words, if I explain, Sila means if you can avoid sin, you commit through your body and word. If you can away from these sin done through body and word, then that is Sila. Because Vinaya, the other word, Pali word Vinaya, Vinaya also means the abstain from the sin through body and word. Vinaya Visesana Nayatta Vinayanato Cheva Karavachana, the Buddha said. So Sila Sampada, if you practice Sila, if you observe precept, if you protect Sila, morality, moral conduct, it will be for your happiness in life after. Sila Sampada. And it is very important. Sila is the foundation of the path. Because without Sila you cannot practice Samadhi, concentration. There is no high jump in the path. So avoiding Sila, you cannot just jump to the concentration, just the meditation. First you have to practice Sila, then Samadhi, then Panya. It's a gradual training. Anupubbha Sikha. So Sila is very important. Sila Sampada. Then third one is Chaga. Chaga, generosity. Chaga, Dana is another Pali word. Giving. But there are various types of giving. Sometimes these are not only giving. It's a very interesting word, Dana. The word itself is very interesting because the root is in other languages also. In English you call donate, donation, the da, the root is there. And there is one Portuguese word, don, the person who gives food to the whole village is called don. Not university don. Don means a village headman in Portuguese language. So the dana, it comes from the root da, to give. But in Buddhism, not only simple giving, sometimes you may give something to the insect, to animal, to fish. When you go to the zoo, you give something to the animals, monkeys, and you watch how they catch this food. And you enjoy looking at them, how they catch this food. That is not a dana. It is a kind of dana, but it is not so meritorious act. But dana in Chaga is explained in Buddhism without any selfish idea, without any attachment to be born in heaven. If you give something, that is the greatest dana offering. So the Bodhisattvas practice this. After practicing dana for a long time, you can come to that level. Then the fourth one is Sila Sampada, Saddha Sampada, Sila Sampada, Chaga Sampada, Panya Sampada, that is the fourth one. Panya is very important in Buddhism. Panya, insight. How you gain it? What is Panya? In short, I shall explain. Now, when you look at the world, early morning when you look at the sky, you see the sun is rising from the east and getting down from the west. But that is not the real thing. That is not the real thing. It happens due to the rotation of the world and the sun. Sun also moves, then the earth also moves. Earth moves around itself and also around the sun. So due to this thing, we see the sun is rising in the east. So what we see through our eyes are not real. Sometimes the reality is entirely different. Therefore, we see people, man, woman, animal, so many things, but they are not. They are the five aggregates, and they are changing. So if you can see this changing, anicca, everything is subject to change. It is anicca. And dukkha, therefore it is suffering, unsatisfactoriness. Anatta, there is nothing permanent, everlasting thing, ego, in this body or out, within or without. That is anatta. If you can understand these three things, three signata, that is panya. That is panya. So this is the most important thing, and in the path this is the highest one. So when you practice this meditation with vipassana bhavana, insight meditation, then you can gain the highest bliss, nibbana. So I conclude my speech here. I think you have been listening for a long time, and while listening to Dhamma you have acquired much merits. So all of us, our aim as Buddhists, our aim is to attain Nibbana. To attain Nibbana, we must have to realize the Dhamma. Therefore, it is very helpful for us to listen to Dhamma and keep in our mind the Dhamma. So, after listening to Dhamma, by listening to Dhamma, you have acquired much merits. May all these merits will be helpful for us to gain happiness in our samsaric journey and also attaining the highest bliss, Nibbana. I wish you all a happy new year, 1991, happy, healthy, wealthy and prosperous year. Thank you very much.
Three speakers tonight. So just now you heard a very interesting talk. First, Reverend Surita Dhamma from America. He is one of my disciples who was ordained here in this temple many years ago. He is doing a lot of welfare work. And he explained his experience and what he is doing. Dr. Jnanasila pointed out very important issues in his talk. He told you how to experience happiness within this life and hereafter, after our deaths, and quoted by giving some sayings of the Buddha. And two important points that he emphasized. Difference between Ganta Dhura and Vipassana Dhura amongst the Sangha community. From the very beginning, in the days of the Buddha, the whole community of the Sangha divided into two groups. One group tried to gain some sort of peace and satisfactions and happiness and wanted to go away from the society into an isolated place or jungle or somewhere and try to meditate and develop their mind. Another group remain in the society, work with the people by attending to all their needs, educating them, advising them, blessings and attending to them and their sicknesses, their funerals, and providing facilities and privileges and erecting temples and maintaining, provide all the facilities for the devotees to practice Buddhism. Just now we mentioned the general opinions of the public regarding these two groups. When a monk comes out from the forest by wearing a dark robe, at once you see he is a very holy man. Not only that, he is an arahant. And people line up to offer dana for that particular monk because he came out from the jungle. The poor monk who had been working here in the society and fighting and quarreling and tolerating everything, attending to your funerals and sicknesses and your nonsensical criticism and everything, still they have courage to work with you. They are not good monks. And they have to cook their own food because they are not good monks. This is the general opinion. To me, those monks who have courage and knowledge and understanding and patience and tolerance to work with you are arahantas to me. Now let us listen to the Buddha. He said, a monk who is in the jungle meditate, but his mind is wandering here and there, no proper concentration. Another monk who is living in the society, work with the people, maintain some sort of discipline and observe his precept. To me, this monk who is living in the society is more holy than those who are in the jungle. Remember this. So you should not differentiate. You should not show your narrow-mindedness in that way by introducing them. We really appreciate those monks who suffer in the jungle in spite of all sorts of mosquitoes and fierce animals and a snake, and they have courage to stay there and to train their mind. But at the same time, don't forget those monks who are working with you, attend to you. When you have problems and troubles and worries, you come to the monk and get their blessing, their advice, and they have courage and they have knowledge to guide you, tell you what to do. And that is the most important point that Reverend Jnanasiya pointed out. Second thing, while enjoying your life as worldly people, how to practice Buddhism? When such people approach the Buddha, seeking his advice, the Buddha never said, no, if you want to practice Buddhism, you must go to jungle. You cannot live in the society. There is no such teaching in Buddhism. He said, yes, if you want to remain as worldly people, these are the guidelines. Of course, after practicing, one day they will realize. When the time comes, then they can renounce. This I have very clearly mentioned in my latest booklet. Is it wrong to be ambitious? I clarify this. I printed about 14,000 copies circulating all over the world. Still we have some here. And what sort of ambitions? The worldly life, household life, married life, our duties, responsibilities, and at the same time how to practice Buddhism. I explain in that booklet. So many people have mixed up the teachings of the Buddha as lay people. If you want to remain in the society to lead the household life, you must know your limit. Don't go beyond that. Otherwise you get into trouble, your way of life becomes nuisance to others. So one day when you realize that way of life is nuisance to you, then renounce the world. That is the practical way. In the ancient Indian society, the whole life is divided into 4 periods. Very practical. Saisebhyasta vidyanang yavone visheshinang vardhake munivrittinang yogenam te tanutyajam. In Sanskrit language, this is not the Buddha saying. Saisebhyasta vidyanang, when you are young, your duty is to study. Don't interfere with so many other things and activities and politics, even romantic life also. Forget about all those things. Concentrate on your studies. When you finish your studies, after you attaining the teenage stage, this is the time for you to experience worldly life. Get married, enjoy life, and indulge your senses reasonable way. After middle age, you have to reduce. Apply the brake in various places. Then concentrate. Now you have more experience, knowledge, maturity, age, education. That knowledge is ripened. You can understand things properly. This is the time for you to concentrate on the deeper aspects in your life and the world and the nature and the universe, what is happening. Then you can understand reality in life. By spending this life, by reducing worldly sensual pleasure, you are reaching the old age. Renounce. Renounce means you have to keep away from your responsibilities, your property and so many other things. You have to hand over to a suitable person. Have free mind. Lead a pure religious life. Then at that time, anger, jealousy, greed, selfishness never appear in the mind, because your mind is free from all the rubbish. Then one day you can die peacefully without fear, without worrying. That is the system. Don't mix up everything. So, his sermon is very practical. He has pointed out these 2 things, and very beneficial, very practical. So as mentioned, our Reverend Jnanasi here, so very happy, prosperous New Year, because we meet again in 1991. So, blessings. Akasatta Jibummatta Devanaga Mahiddhika Punyantang Anumoditva Jirangakkantu Lokasaganang Itta Utta Jyamhi Samputang Punya Sampadang Sabbi Deva Anumodantu Sampatti Siddhya Devo Vasatu Kalena Sassa Sampatti Pito Bhavatu Loko Che Raja Bhavatu Dhammiko Idango Jnati Nangotu Sukhita Huntu Jnatayo Imina Punya Kammena Mami Bali Samahu Patang Samayamotu Yava Nibbana Pattiya. Yes, there is a young member of our society who has returned after 10 years from America. He says he would like to speak a few words and maybe some sort of message from America. Chok Samchuan, 5 minutes.
Most Venerable Dhammananda, Venerable Bhikkhus, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I'm indeed very happy to be back here in this temple, particularly to be with the most Venerable Dhammananda, whom I consider to be my foremost teacher of the Buddha Dharma, as well as the best teacher I've ever had in the world, in all the places I've been to. And I must say that all of us are very lucky to have him as our Venerable Master. And I think there is insufficient words in the English language that I could ever find to describe how grateful I am to him, and to quote the many instances that he has helped me personally as well as many of us here. And I would like personally to pay a personal tribute to him as my worst male teacher. And I must say that it is important for all of us to follow the teachings of our great teacher, to at least follow to observe the 5 precepts every day, as well as to keep up with the daily chanting and meditations. And in the course of my stay in the United States, particularly, as well as in other countries, I feel that it has been the Buddha Dharma, the knowledge and the practice that have helped me through difficult times, as well as to give me the good karma to enjoy the good times, to be able to have many good friends and relatives and so on, to be able to live a successful and happy life. And I must say that this temple or temple here is one of the most well-known temples in the whole world. You only have to go to other countries to really appreciate how lucky all of us are. And as you can see, since 10 years ago when I left, we did not have this hall, we didn't even have the building next door. We just had the monks' quarters over there, the international pagoda, as well as the main shrine room. And with those few words, I would like to wish Venerable Dhammananda Thera the best of health and happiness, and I'm happy that he has survived many difficult times with his health problems, but in a way I'm also happy that I've been thinking about him, and whenever I had a chance to meditate, I was able to radiate the metta bhavana that he has taught me to think of him and help him through his problems. But I'm happy that he looks younger since I saw him last time 10 years ago. And all of us here must be really happy that he's back with us in one piece, so to say. And I'm sure all of us will be able to enjoy his presence through many more years. And let us all, whenever we meditate or chant or whatever, think about our most Venerable Dhammananda. And with all our blessings and prayers, I'm sure I would say that the Venerable Dhammananda is one small step for Malaysia, but one big step for mankind. Wish all of you a very happy New Year. Thank you.